Story 1. They spanked me with a wooden spoon, yelled at me, and worst of all, always invalidated my feelings. For example, when I tried to tell them I was not feeling well on a long hike, they yelled at me for being lazy, made me finish the hike, and only after we returned home did they find out I had a very high fever. Story 2. My dad was a heavy drinker, and he always made me feel terrible at parties by saying and doing drunken things. For example, he started talking about my sex life when I was 12 at my second communion party. He would also pick fights with my mom. He was a very loving dad when he did not drink, but at any party, barbecue, or get-together, he would be drunk. Because of his health, he does not drink much anymore. He still drinks a little, but I have grown up, so it does not happen anymore. I do not drink alcohol because I fear I would be a terrible drunk too. I do not want to lose control of myself, especially around my kids. Story 3. Grab your popcorn as this is going to be a long one. Background: Southeast Asian Chinese. This is important. I was always told I was picked up from a rubbish bin. Not her child. She took pity and took me home. Took me 35 years to deal with it. She slipped up by telling my son that his mother, my wife, picked him up from a rubbish bin when he was about 6. This was during an extended family dinner. I stood up and told her calmly that it was okay for her to abuse me with that, but not him. My wife gave birth to him, I was at the hospital, and if my mum said another word about it, she would be attending her own funeral. Shocked gasps all around, especially considering this was during the Lunar New Year. My wife and brother said I had the calm but "I will kill you" look. Fun fact: the chopsticks in my hand were snapped into 2. What did she, my mum, deserve to have such a stupid son as me? I did not aspire to her ideals of being a doctor during my schooling years. When I started working, I asked how I was going to provide for my family. Later in life, I told her maybe I was born stupid because I got stupid genes. That has been my go-to response whenever she passes any denigrating comments. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Physical punishment does not serve any purpose. Dad found that out when he tried to thrash me and I thrashed back. Wild, aimless flailing will always lose to well-timed punches and kicks. Associating that the purpose of children is that they are a financial investment that will pay back later. Story 4. Force children to finish all the food on their plate. Children should learn to trust their own feelings of fullness. Story 5. Make us do all the household chores without contributing themselves. I believe in assigning children age-appropriate chores to teach basic housekeeping and instill a sense of personal responsibility, but this was too much. Story 6. Beat my kids with any sort of tools like a belt, paddle, stick, hanger, fly swatter, etc. My parents would grab objects and start beating us with them. My mom once said that she had to beat us with the paddle because she couldn't hit us hard enough with her hands to make it count. She wanted welts, broken skin, and blood. My dad usually used the belt and sometimes hit me with the buckle, leaving bruises and cuts on my legs. My husband and I do not use any kind of punishment with our daughter. She is amazing and has grown up to be very well behaved. Story 7. I do not know where to begin, but it resulted in me deciding not to have children at all. I just do not want to find out what I could be capable of doing to a child that pushed me far enough. Nobody deserves to inherit the scars of their parents. Story 8. Be physically violent in any way, even under the guise of discipline. Let my son see any animosity between his father and me, even though we are not together. I have never said a bad thing about his father in front of him. In fact, one day I told my son that I love his father very much, and he rolled his eyes and said, "Ugh, I know. I think I am doing it right." Story 9. Have an age gap such that the older siblings become de facto caretakers of the younger ones. I love my younger siblings, and I don't resent them, but I spent a lot of time providing care for them from the time they were born until I moved out at 18. Also, my youngest sibling was about 5 when I moved out. We are not nearly as close as I am with my other 3 siblings. Story 10. Both my sisters and I have sworn we are not having children because of the numerous hereditary health issues and psychological issues that we all are dealing with due to this problematic bloodline. Story 11. Not believing you when it comes to your mental health, especially as a man. I was told growing up that men do not have anxiety and other statements that invalidate or minimize my problems. I did not know that feeling your heart in your throat and not being able to breathe or think was a panic attack, or that anxiety could manifest as irrational anger. I am almost 30 and am still learning things I should have learned 2 decades ago. Story 12. Drink or smoke around them. Neglect them. I don't have a single memory of my parents actually playing with me. It was my grandparents who did that. They were just drinking or hungover whenever they were not working. Story 13. Oh, so many things. Among them, sometimes my dad would pretend that he was mad at me, not in a we all know we're kidding way, but he actually acted like he was mad. After 5 or 10 minutes, my mom would nod to me to tell me he was kidding. Sometimes, though, my mom would shake her head to tell me that he was really mad. Once, when my parents couldn't tell which of us 3 boys did a bad thing, they had us run a foot race and the loser got spanked. If the phone rang back when we had a landline and it woke my parents up, I got in trouble. It didn't matter if I was asleep, too. It didn't matter if the phone was for them. I got in trouble. Story 14. Being overprotective and never allowing children to do anything other than school and academics can result in them having no confidence in themselves, lacking social skills, experiencing major anxiety issues, and being scared of everything in real life. I want to raise confident children who believe they can do anything. Story 15. My domineering father was violent throughout our entire childhood. My mother was not strong enough to stand up to him. I received my last beating at 14 and told him, "Go ahead, do what you do best." He ran out of the room. I love my children dearly, and I would be incapable of violence in any way, shape, or form. Story 16. Take away their passion, whatever it is, because of grades. My passion growing up was baseball. From 5 to 12 years old, it was all I thought about. I was an outstanding talent as well, but my parents viewed sports as a distraction and nuisance from academics. So when I was struggling with a new subject and brought home a C on my report card, they pulled me out of baseball and never let me play again. What they didn't count on was my hatred and loathing for them because of this. I proceeded to fail in school and refused to apply myself from that day forward. In the end, I paid the price, but I do not and will never view my decision as a mistake. It was a horrid parenting decision and changed my life for the worse. I swore if I ever had kids, no matter their passions, I would not strip them of those passions because of grades. I will never tie what my kids love to their academic success. Their passions may save their lives, give them opportunities, and provide them a whole new path to walk in life. Story 17. Forced me to eat food I knew I legitimately hated because they thought I was just being difficult. No, broccoli is disgusting to me and always will be. To invalidate my experience and get mad at me for having it is unacceptable. Bad parenting. Story 18. My answer is make me eat peas. I have great parents, but my mother used to tell us that eating peas would cure earaches. I disagreed with that a long time ago. Peas and beets are terrible. Story 19. My mom shook me when I would not sleep, but did not do any damage. My dad told me he wished I was never born when I was a teenager. The bar is low. Story 20. Make them become doctors against their will. I went to school with many people who eventually became doctors. I asked each one if they would choose the same path knowing what they know today, and the overwhelmingly common response was hell no. All of them would let their own children choose their destinies, and a few actively discouraged pursuing medicine as a career. Story 21. Do not give them a chance to explain themselves. Be sarcastic about their interests and always focus on the negative aspects, especially recalling small faults whenever celebrating an achievement. Make them feel unattractive. Put other people before their own children. Story 22. Say empty threats to try to keep them in line. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it. Acting like their feelings or thoughts do not matter just because they are a child. You are a kid. How can you be depressed? I was told, as a child, things like, I love you, but I do not like you right now. That did so much damage to my self-esteem and feelings of self-worth. I am not sure if it ever healed. I knew my family truly loved me, but it does not make it hurt any less. Story 23. Experience severe punishment for minor mistakes. One time, I was told to put a tub of ice cream in the refrigerator. I really wanted a bite, but was too scared to ask. I took a bite of the ice cream, and although I was afraid to speak in front of my parents, they made me. My stepfather then punished me with a belt for eating a bite of ice cream without permission. Story 24. Never stunt their curiosity and let them ask questions. Also, never say things out of anger such as, "Well, you are not my child anymore." Story 25. Growing up, my sisters and I were not allowed to go out, not even to the tuck shop just 10 minutes away to buy snacks because we were girls. No phones until a certain age, constant monitoring, and very little freedom. Meanwhile, our younger brothers could do whatever they wanted. They visited friends, stayed out overnight sometimes, and my dad would even joke about it. If I have children, I will not raise them like that. I will let both my son and daughter hang out with their friends. I will teach them both about safety and responsibility, and I will keep them safe without stripping away their social lives just because of their gender. Story 26. Made me feel uncomfortable and afraid to come to them about certain things I was experiencing. I felt like I had to keep quiet and hide everything or else I would get in trouble, get yelled at, and upset them. I made sure that my children know 100% that they can come to me with anything no matter what it is. We have the best relationship because of it. Story 27. Punish me for being honest. I learned how to spin lies like a professional purely to avoid the verbal punishment I would get if I told the truth. Even if they coaxed it out of me with the old phrase, "If you tell the truth, I won't be mad." I would prefer my future children to feel safe telling me things both good and bad. There is no reason for your children to only share their triumphs and deal with their failures alone. Story 28. I have quite the list, but the biggest is putting my child in the care of others or putting myself before my child. My mother was awful to my father, and he was not parent of the year either, but there were a few times when my parents separated during my childhood, and I was always left at my grandmother's house. I used to accidentally call my grandmother Mom, sometimes because of it. The last time was in high school. I stayed there until I moved out at 18, and I spent those years feeling abandoned. She never came back for me and kept me from my father long enough to ruin their relationship for years. The worst feeling for a child is to feel left behind by their family, and I cannot imagine doing that to a child, especially your own child, just out of hate. Story 29. They made fun of me about the opposite sex. It damaged my confidence so much that I did not bring any girlfriend home until my late 20s, when I introduced them to the girl who became my wife. Story 30. I am firmly in the Generation X category, and although I love my parents and have a good relationship with them, they are very typical baby boomer parents. My mother smokes. I would never do that because I find it very disgusting. However, at the same time, smoking does not offend me. I do not remember ever being really shown how to do much. I was left to figure things out for myself, yet criticized at best and shouted at worst when I got it wrong. Because of this, I prided myself on showing my daughter how to do things and encouraging her. They would think nothing of calling me a stupid idiot. In my view, these were terrible choices of language and showed a total lack of patience. God forbid I interrupted anything, as children do. I would frequently be yelled at to shut up. In fact, I would often get yelled at and not even know what I had supposedly done wrong. More than once, my mother told me I was making her life miserable just because she had to tidy up. One thing they both carry into today is their view that they are my parents and therefore they are correct, and my opinion does not matter. They are right because they are parents, and I do not get a say because I am their child. Again, I would never want to make my daughter feel that way. I know they do not mean those things, and that is simply how people of their generation parented. It is probably why I am a typically thick-skinned Generation X person. Story 31. Spank me and drink too much on weekends. I have never laid a hand on my children and barely drink. My children have never seen me intoxicated and never will. Story 32. You received a grade below B on an assignment. You are grounded for 2 weeks, and your grade in class is below B. You are grounded until it improves. I never got better. I gave up in late middle school and high school. I spent maybe 6 months total out of 5 years being allowed to do anything enjoyable. I had to take summer physical education classes 5 years in a row to graduate and still barely passed. Now I am recovering from deep depression and anxiety, feeling that I am not doing well enough and that someone or something will ruin my life. Story 33. I grew up as my narcissistic father's scapegoat. Nothing was ever good enough. I was always blamed. I was shamed for having passions and interests. I would never treat my child that way. Story 34. Make them constantly aware of my anxieties and stresses as children to the point they develop their own anxiety disorders in adulthood. Story 35. I felt too damaged, so I swore off having children. I believed I would harm them, and that vicious cycle is unnecessary. Story 36. My mom is very strict about cleanliness. I am not allowed in my room upstairs until I shower, but I have to eat dinner at the dinner table on the main floor. So I have to wait until dinner before I can shower and go to my room. I also have to clean every single item that goes upstairs, even a sheet of paper. Many assignments were ripped up when I was a child because of this. There are many more rules I have not mentioned. I would be hit and yelled at if I broke the rules. Story 37. Use my child as my therapist, listening ear, or complaint forum. You might have realized by this that I am the elder sibling, and as a result, the expectation of listening to my mother's complaints was placed on me. If she and Dad disagreed about anything, I would be the one listening to the end of it. She is a wonderful woman, but she does not understand the concept of a difference of opinion. She just wants everyone to agree with her and her way of living. Someday, when or if I decide to have children, they will never have to sit and listen to me lamenting. I will take charge like a proper adult, and any issues between me and my future husband will stay between us. Story 38. Belittle them constantly, scream and shout at them, threaten them constantly, call them offensive names. Story 39. Body shame so cruelly as a 13-year-old wearing a halter neck top that to this day, at 38, I cannot wear anything sleeveless. Story 40. Make them feel that they owe me for everything. My mother would frequently make comments about me living under her roof and spending her money when I was growing up, interspersed with jibes like, "What do you know about earning money?" Those were facts, of course, but only recently have I realized, when talking to other friends, that not every parent says these sorts of things. It was often, and still is but less often now that I am working and we no longer live in the same country, never mind the same house, used as a weapon during disagreements, that I always had to pander to her wants. She would often stonewall me for days or weeks if I had done something she did not like. She believes she has the right to do that because I owe her. Story 41. There were literal screaming matches around us. It made me very anxious as a child, and even as an adult, I still get anxious during confrontation. I never wanted to be at home. I would always run off to the neighbor's house so I would not have to hear it. Story 42. It's too complex to convey what I need to. Basically, everything they did was fine but also completely messed up. Story 43. I do not have any financial planning for retirement. I already had to pay for all their medical expenses when I had just barely started working full-time. While my peers are enjoying their 20s with their expendable income or building up their savings and passive income for their own retirement, I am living paycheck to paycheck, using everything I earn to pay for my parents' living and medical expenses. These expenses will only continue to increase as they get older and face more medical problems. Story 44. My parents were great, certainly not as bad as some of the other parents mentioned in these comments. However, there is one thing I would change. My mother used to always talk negatively about her body and say how fat and ugly she felt, especially when trying on clothes. She was constantly doing fad diets and was frustrated with herself. She never said anything bad about her children's bodies, but she set a poor example. When I look exactly like her one day, it will affect my self-image. Additionally, she taught us negative ways of thinking about food. For my own children, I will teach them to listen to their hunger cues and to love their bodies unconditionally. Story 45. Have you ever read through a Reddit post and been amazed at how absolutely terrible other people's parents were? My parents were both baby boomers, but they raised me and my siblings so well that I cannot think of a single thing to complain about. I would gladly raise children the exact same way my parents raised me. Story 46. Not having good boundaries about personal and social life and being unreasonably strict. Anytime I went out with friends in my late teens or early 20s, I would get what felt like an interrogation about who I was seeing and where I was going. Constant phone calls about why I was not home yet. Coming home and getting yelled at for being late, and being guilt-tripped that I was a bad daughter. One time, I came home in tears after a fight with my then-boyfriend, and when my mother heard me come through the door, she stormed over and blasted me about getting home late. My sister woke up from the noise and told her to back off since I was visibly upset enough already. Overall, this attitude felt especially unfair since I am not even a party all night kind of person. Most of the time, if I was out, I would just be at a friend's place gaming or watching movies. Also, on the flip side, staying home gaming with friends, I would get yelled at for being holed up in my room all day. It basically felt like I was not allowed to have any type of socialization. In hindsight, I can understand why my parents, especially my mother, acted the way they did, in that it was general worry over my well-being, safety, and whereabouts. But I strongly disagree with the way they went about it. Strict parenting just breeds sneaky kids. And my sister and I got really good at lying and sneaking out of the house. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.